LabCoatAgents podcast.
LabCoat Nation, welcome back for another episode of the LabCoatAgents podcast. And it's not uncommon that I say, as we go into these podcasts, that I literally just met somebody like 2 minutes ago. Today's even more unique, and we're going to test my skills here because I wasn't even sure why we were meeting, because this is what Tristan does to me sometimes, is he forwards me guests with no context whatsoever. So my friend Jason Martin and my new friend Jason Martin and I just spent 10 minutes rapping about some pretty awesome stuff. And I'm excited now to share this with you. He is a real estate leader in the DMV market and has just released a new book called This Is Your Captain Speaking. And the reason why I'm probably most excited about this conversation today is because, hey, we're not going to really talk about business. This is going to be more about life lessons and becoming the best version of you. And let me stop right there before you stop listening because you think this is going to be a hokey conversation. Don't. Stick with it, because this is the kind of stuff that, real estate agents, you get into the business and you get into the business for all the wrong reasons. And then you find yourself in business and 10 years later, either A, you're struggling, or B, you have nothing to show for it. And so I think we're going to talk about so many of the things that so many of you overlook today when it comes to life and how it relates back to business. And you know what? I've only had 10 minutes of your time so far, Jason. So I'm excited to get another 30 or 45. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me, and you did a nice job setting that up there. So we were chatting for 10 minutes, and I got to know you, and you got to know me in 10 minutes. You get a new friend in this world. Isn't that fun?
Isn't that amazing? It's fun. I tell you what, I always tell people I'm the luckiest guy in real estate because I get to host the LabCoatAgents podcast, which means I get to meet some amazing people, and today is no different. So, Jason, let's start with this. Let's assume our audience doesn't know who you are, so give them the quick background of who you are, where you come from, how you came up in the business, and what led you to where you are today.
Gotcha. Got into the business in 2003. Prior to that, like most agents in the business, I was in a different profession altogether. I'm a former sports anchor. So I did that. That was my childhood dream coming out of college, was to be a sports anchor. Did that for a few years and then got into real estate in 2003. I run a team based in Washington, D.C., as you mentioned. There's about 15 of us, and we did over 100 million, closer to 110 million last year, 175 units, on pace to do 250 units this year. And I throw all of that out there really, really fast. And Jeff, I'm just going to tell you one thing. I think, and you'll appreciate it, I think we talk about, and I appreciate you asking that question, we talk about that component too much. Like, what's your numbers? What's your production? What's your team like? And I think that's all good, right? It gives some credibility to who I am and why we're on the podcast. But the reality is, I don't really focus on that stuff. While I know it, I don't focus on that. What I really focus on is being the best version of myself possible. I want to be the best father I can be. I want to be the best husband I can be. I want to be the best business leader I can be. And what I've learned, and this is where I hope people will get something out of this conversation, is by focusing on being the best version of me possible, even though that sounds selfish, and we'll talk about that in a second, others reap the benefits of it. Those closest to me reap the benefits of it. And that's my children and my wife. And the cool part about it is when you do that, when you adapt that mindset, it overflows into the business side of it. So why I say we talk too much about the business, I genuinely believe it. I think the business can still prosper without that being the number one priority and number one focus. And for me, my number one priority is my family. And that's kind of how we got to this living legacy, this book that's coming out. And it's packed with a bunch of life lessons that are also applicable to business.
I love it. So I got a couple questions, but first I need to digress. I'm a big sports fan, so I have to know, you were a sports anchor. In what sport? How long did you do that? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. I was in that. So when the time far back as I could remember, that was my childhood dream. And we got a chapter in the book on that. It's called "And Now Batting," which talks about dreams and why you should chase them and how to chase them. but got into that out of college, graduated from the University of South Carolina. First job was in Augusta, Georgia, and delivered the master's in 2001. And so that was very, very fun. Some good experiences with Arnold Palmer and Tiger Woods at the Masters in 2001. Again, we share some of those stories in the book. And then went from there to Wilmington, North Carolina, as the Fox anchor for a local station there, and did that for a few years, and then switched over to real estate. So box checked for dream chasing and dream accomplishing, and then and now I'm still a dreamer, man.
Why'd you leave? Why'd you leave sports?
It's the real answer is, and I'll be direct with you guys, is it's a hard industry to control your own destiny. So that's the main reason. It's like, man, this is tough. This isn't really within my control. So I could see it being capped and myself getting frustrated with the trajectory. So that was it.
And that's a lot of reason why a lot of people get into real estate. I actually left sports to get into the mortgage industry, and it was totally accidental, but same reasons. Sports was fun, but I had no control over my future. And I just decided that I wanted to have more opportunities, and I would have more by creating them myself. I love what you said there. So I want to move forward, because actually I could probably spend 30 or 45 minutes just talking to you about that. In fact, we could just talk about the Masters alone if you wanted to, but I don't think our audience would be interested in that. So you mentioned that we talk too much about business, and here I am as the podcast host, and that's really, by and large, out of the 110 plus episodes that we've done, I can count on one hand how many have kind of not been about business, right? That's just not common, because at the end of the day, and I think if I'm listening to this, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I love what you say, but at the same token, I'm still running the business. And so when I get into a LabCoatAgents, for example, I go there not to be entertained, but to be educated and learn about business, right? So I'm thinking what somebody else might be thinking, which is, okay, you're probably right, but at the same token, how the hell do I run a successful business if I'm not immersed in learning about business?
So thank you for asking that, and that's a very valid point. So let me ask you a couple questions, if you don't mind. It'll help us dive into this conversation. In your professional world, when do you think you're operating at your peak performance? Like you personally, let's just use you as an example. When are you at your best? And free flow, let's let it ride.
When am I at my best? Like the time of day, the time of year? Like, what's the context?
Anything. When's your mindset? When's your productivity? When is your energy? What is your peak performance? If you're a race car, when you're doing you're at your peak speed, how did you get there?
I mean, well, for me, I guess the answer to that question, that's a tough question to answer, but I would say that I'm probably in the prime when I get the opportunity to talk about the things that I'm most passionate about. That's when I'm really moving, right? And I think in this world, we all struggle a little bit to stay focused. I know I do. But I think I really get into a groove when I have the opportunity to, usually it's coaching or helping someone, which I do a lot of that. And so I guess maybe that's probably one of the reasons why success is also following me, because I'm finally able to do something that I'm most passionate about. And I guess it probably shows. So I don't know, is that too vague?
No, that's a perfect answer. And there's no right or wrong answer here, but I appreciate you answering it that way. You said a word, passion, and I think about the word passion, and what do you tie to that? You tie energy to that. You like helping people. You like coaching people. Well, I hear that a little differently than probably some of the audience hears it. I hear and go, what does that have to do with business? We're not talking about business. We're talking about what excites you. We're talking about what gives you energy. We're talking about what you're drawn to. We're talking about helping people. And then you see how that links to the professional side, right? You're running towards what excites you, the person, because that's what gets you going. That's what motivates you. So if you're clear enough on the front end to understand what gives you that energy and what your passions are, the business, you just defined it very well for me. The business will follow. So like, it's contagious when you share with the world what you're passionate about. So that's why I think if we just went into tell me about your businesses and tell me how many hours a day you work, or, do you grind it out? Of course, all of those may be components, but check out on the front end what we just did with that conversation right there.
Right.
And then what I think people can do is go there first and business second. And that's why I think we talk too much about it. Not that we don't have to talk about business. You ask about my numbers, I ripped them off. I know the numbers. The business requires a certain amount of effort. I get all of that. But let's talk about you, the person, first, because I think when we can go in that order, it is so much easier to be purposeful and to be productive in the business arena. And I really, really do. If you look at the business as a grind, right? And you're like, I'm grinding every day and this is what I got to do. And lead generation, I know the conversations. I've been around a long time. That's a hard way to think about it. But I think about the businesses, not necessarily as the business, but opportunity. I think of it as opportunity to constantly be learning. I think of it as opportunity to get a master's degree in business, an opportunity to understand the psychology of people, an opportunity to understand relationships, an opportunity to learn all sorts of business skills that I can apply to anything. So I just reverse engineer it and how I look at it. And it also makes it easier. It makes the business easier because that's the way I think about it. It's more exciting for me to understand the full opportunity through the lens of life first.
Sure. Okay. So now that you just quantified that, it totally makes sense to me because of the fortunate path that I've been on, which has been, you and I talked about this off air for a minute, which was I started coming from contribution and just giving and giving. I found a niche, right? By accident, which for me was video, but I was lucky enough to find it before people were doing it. So that I quickly became an authority on it. And then I quickly realized that if I share it, that people gravitated towards me, and I didn't need to speak about business. So now I teach that, and which sounds to me like it's exactly what you're talking about. My question is this. I get it. Like I get exactly what you're saying, which is kind of like the Gary V jab, jab, hook, but more like jab, 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 like in perpetuity. And then maybe throw a little hook in there every once in a while. And this is what I tell people, if you follow this type of a strategy, it will come back tenfold. It will. But most people, I guess, can't get out of their own way because they just want to sell. I don't know if they want to, they feel like they need to sell. Like if I'm going to get on Facebook Live, I have to talk about real estate statistics, right? And they don't understand why they have no following and they get no engagement because that content is boring. Just using that as an example.
It's not authentic to who they are.
Correct. So the question though, then lies as somebody listening and saying, okay, I've actually followed Jeff and I've heard him say this before. Now I'm hearing Jason say it. How do I, I'm passionate about gardening, for example, or I'm passionate about golf. How do I tie those passions back? How does that come back? Like, I get it. Jeff did video and now he's a social media expert and I get it. But how do I find that? How do I find my niche?
So I'm a little worried about the folks who, and I've been one of them. So let me say that first. And as a long career, 18, 19, almost 20 years, I've been one of these folks who didn't understand what my passion was in the business. I think there's a lot of listeners you have right now who don't understand what about the business excites them. So let me break that down for a second. For those that are just doing transactions and it's a job, I get it, but boy, I'd hate to be in that role. I mean, it wouldn't excite me each day when I get up to have that mentality. Some people need it, just I don't. When you're able to identify, for me within the business realm, you know what excites me in the business realm is helping agents grow their business. That is my passion, is helping people grow. You like to coach people. You're host of this podcast. You like to share information. It's the same thing for me. So if I can apply what excites me in life to the business piece, the business is so much easier. So my passion within the industry is helping agents grow their business. And genuinely, I get a boost of energy from an agent who comes and goes, I'm 7 months in the business and I got 4 things under contract and I've had something to do with that. So I understand what excites me. And you can do the same thing on the transaction side. The reason I came up with this, which it didn't happen overnight, but about 3 years ago, I said, okay, what on the transaction side excites me? If you break that down, you're out there servicing a client. It's not opening the door. It's likely not writing the contract. It's not going to the inspection. This is just for me, and I imagine it's a lot for everybody else. But what did excite me as the agent was helping somebody move somewhere in their lives, right? Doing something for them, that you're selling their house and they're going to retire. You're selling their house and it's going to pay for their kids' college. You're their first time buyer and you're helping them get their first house. I draw energy from that, man. So like that's really fun for me. And guess what I'm talking about? We're right back to full circle. We're talking about life. So we are talking about life. And I think when you go with it like that, you can draw energy from different things in the business, because if we're having a frank conversation, this business can be a grind. Mm-hmm. Let's not overlook the grind that can take place. But if we can make it purposeful and understand what motivates us and where we're going in life because of the opportunities the business is providing for us, bang, it doesn't feel like a business anymore. Right. And people are like, well, what do you mean it doesn't feel like a business anymore? It doesn't feel so transactional. Let me say it better. It doesn't feel so transactional. Right. It feels like all I'm doing is moving in a direction that I want to go in my life, and the business is just a part of that. And through this journey that I put myself through, that's how we came up with the book. Like, here I am. I'm just open to experiencing life first. And that's why I got the first book coming out. And you go to todayyouchoose.com if you want to connect with me on this stuff. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about it. Todayyouchoose.com. And the book is This Is Your Captain Speaking: Life Lessons from the Journey So Far.
I love it. I love it. So, I mentioned kind of how I stumbled upon mine. Let's talk about yours. So you've clearly found this, and it's so profound to you. You wrote a book about it. Tell us like what was it? Because the reality is, and I hear you talking about these things, and it reminds me, like, even for me in the mortgage business, you in the real estate business, the transaction doesn't go away. Like the mortgage process arguably is harder now than ever. Same with the real estate side, because you're a part of that, right? It's become more scrutinized. It's just the way of the world for a lot of different reasons. And so that part never stops sucking, right? Yeah. But I will agree with you, like, it doesn't suck as bad as it used to, even though it's actually harder now. One's because I've scaled the business, and now I have people to handle that piece of it that I don't have to anymore. And that's one benefit to it. I think the other is, and you kind of alluded to this, is the business, the same sucky business it becomes more enjoyable when you're not also stressed about where's my next deal going to come from.
Yes.
And is that so? I yes. Kind of diverged away from the question, which was, what was it for you? Like, what was it that led you down this path?
It's a gravitational pull, right? So you're probably happier right now, Jeff. And hearing you talk, you're super ambitious. I get it. I understand that. You got things you want to accomplish. I don't doubt any of that. But are you happy, right? Like you seem pretty happy right now.
Like, I enjoy work now more than ever.
Yeah, me too.
It's not really work. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm the exact same. Did we have to hustle to get here? Sure. Of course we did. But how fulfilling is it? So how did I come to it? About 7 years ago, I started journaling, and I started just documenting my own thoughts. And listen, I don't want to mislead anybody and tell everybody I've got it all figured out. I don't, but I'm working on it, and I've learned a lot. So when I started journaling about 7 years ago, I started documenting my own thoughts, good days or bad days. You can do it twice a month, once a month, it's enough. And I started learning from myself. I'm like, that's how I used to think. Oh, I see how I think. You know how many thoughts we have in a day. You know how many thoughts we have that are negative. That's a whole nother conversation. But when I started to put the pieces together of my own life, that's when the clarity sort of came in. I was like, man, this is short, dude. Like, this is all short. My kids aren't even going to live under my own roof for that big of a stretch of time in my lifetime. I want to capture life to the best that I can. And the best way for me to experience it at a happy level is to be selfish. And what does that mean? When I am my best version of myself, I have a ton of energy. I'm well rested. My brain is working well. And who reaps that benefit? Everybody around me that matters most. So I started documenting this stuff, and I was like, damn, that's it. That is it. And that's provided a ton of clarity for me. And it's also provided enough clarity that, like, the business happens to be growing simultaneously. So while you said in the beginning, like, all right, if you're listening and then you're like, all right, what is this about to be? You know, maybe we'll cut this off. No, I'm telling you, your business can double, triple, and quadruple. I just believe, and I'll say it again, the reason that we hold ourselves back, or for people that are stuck, it's the person in the mirror. It's not the, I need a new Zillow account.
Right.
You know?
I think the hardest part for most people, though, is how do I make, let's just say I'm struggling right now and I'm listening to this. I need deals. I need transactions. So I get it. I want to get there. But how do I get there? Because the truth is, and when I coach people, I'll always tell them, like, the strategies I'm going to teach you are a long game. And here's the beauty of it. What I'm teaching you, very, very few will follow through with. And the reason they won't follow through is they don't see a quick ROI and they don't have the patience for it. And so how do you overcome that with that person who's listening to this saying, like, I feel like there's probably people like, I need to vacate just this whole conversation. I love it. It's cool. It's dreamy, but I have to vacate it because life happens and I've got a bill to pay and I got to go find a deal. And so how would you advise somebody that's thinking like that?
So there's a couple pieces to that. So what you're asking is we're talking about the squeeze. So is the squeeze worth the juice, right? There is a squeeze. There is effort that is required. All of that is in play. And I think people need to do a better job of asking themselves questions. I know me personally, before I look, and I wasn't always this way, but before I look at new opportunities, you and I were talking about opportunities before this call started. Before I look at opportunities, I seek deeply to understand the squeeze. And what do I mean by that? What is it going to take to do what you are just describing? And I'm going to pair that up with self-awareness. Am I willing to go through that squeeze for that result? The reason I'm able to answer that confidently is because I know myself well enough. Jeff, I don't want to be up at 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I don't want to be up at 8 in the morning taking client phone calls. Dude, let's be honest, I don't want to work more than 6 hours a day. I'll tell you right now, I don't. But I'm understanding that because I know my own boundaries and I know when I'm my best, right? So if I went on 10 new client appointments and I went on those new client appointments at 7 o'clock at night, my energy's so drained at 7 o'clock at night that the likelihood that I would get the number of appointments that I want to get out of that is pretty minimal. If I went on those same appointments, call it 9 o'clock in the morning, and I prefer it to be earlier than that, I bet my conversion rate is so much better. Mm-hmm. So what did I have to do to put myself in that seat to get a better conversion rate? I had to go to bed at a reasonable time. I had to shut my phone off at a reasonable time. I had to not eat a big dinner. I like to read before I go to sleep. What's my sleep patterns? All of this is in self-awareness and just trying to get my mind in the right spot. So I'm better. I'm a better version of myself in a shorter window of time with clients.
Yeah. I can certainly agree with that. So let's try to give our audience something tactical here to take away from this. Is there any kind of exercise, mental or physical, or any which way that they can use to kind of find their thing or their things?
Yep. It needs to be really, really simple. So I think journaling, everybody should journal. I'm a huge fan of that because we forget a lot of the thoughts that we have. How can we not? So journaling's one trick that I recommend to anybody and everybody. It doesn't have to be about business, and mine's all about life, and there's a few business lessons in there. But the other trick I use, and there's this company out there called Shower Thoughts Co. Shower Thoughts Co. is this dry erase board that I can put in my shower. So if you're like me, I have my best thoughts when I'm in the shower in the morning through self-awareness, right? Like, when's my brain working right? When I'm in that hot steam shower, my brain's like this. I'm crisp. And so I researched and I'm like, well, I need to write this stuff down. You got to document your thoughts. So in my shower, I've got the whiteboard with the dry erase, and I put 3 things up there for the week, and no more than 3 because I won't accomplish them. I just won't. If I put 5, I accomplish less. If I put 3, I got a good chance of making it happen. So 2 of the 3 for me are, no sweets this week, or exercise 4 times, or be to sleep by 9:30 or 10 o'clock. My wife makes fun of me for that, by the way. But and then there might be one business goal, like 10 appointments for the week, and I track it and I go in there, and the next day it's right there in front of my face. Okay, cool. There's my business goal, 10 appointments. But you better believe I got those personal goals right there too, because they're leading to, check this out, they're leading to that business success. If I'm tired, my success the next day in the business world is so poor. But if I'm well rested and I'm energized and I'm charged up, my success rate is great. Sure, it means setting boundaries with your clients. And I know the market we're in. So like, I get there are components and there are people looking like, this is all good in theory. I'm not saying it's possible 100% of the time. I'm saying you need to start the conversation with yourself, and you need to start documenting your thoughts and see what is the best version of you possible. And I also don't believe, Jeff, I genuinely don't believe most of us have achieved our potential. I haven't achieved my full potential. You haven't achieved your full potential. I guarantee you'd sync up with that. So I'm curious what that looks like. Does it have to be with another 100 units of homes sold? Maybe. I don't know. That's not what gets my motors running. So it's a lofty conversation, but I'm telling you, it starts with you, and that those simple things, journaling, and then the weekly goals have changed it, and just through awareness.
I love it. I love it. And if I can add a testimonial to it, for me, it's weird how it all started. So it started with video because I was just trying to create differentiation. I had I didn't have goals. Like in 2020, we did almost 2,000 units. Like, I never dreamt of that, to be honest with you. I never dreamt of 500 million in volume. And now we're talking about, we'll probably hit 1 billion. Never thought about that. And I'm not even strategizing for it. But for me, it also started with, I actually met a guy named Jesse Itzler. I don't know if you know who Jesse is.
I don't.
Self-made billionaire. He's married to a billionaire, but the guy does some crazy stuff. And it was, I met him at a mastermind and just had the fortunate, I raised my hand, asked a question, and ended up getting some free time with him, which was amazing. But I was thinking to myself, because I'm a fitness guy, and funny, you mentioned the shower thing. Most of my best thoughts come while running. And which sucks, because I've always thought, I wish somebody would invent something that would allow me to take notes while running, like an effective way to take notes while running, because I lose a lot of them, right? Because you just get lost, and I guess there's something pumping through your body. But it started for me. It has started with fitness, and it was because I set a goal in 2018 to run 2,018 miles. So to run the number of miles that are the year, which required insane discipline. It was over 6 miles a day average, which that's a whole nother story in and of itself. But what it has since created is now every year I create some pretty insane goals, and less than like that, because that was challenging, and I did it. But and the hardest part was just avoiding injury, to be honest with you. But it has created this discipline and this desire inside myself now, because my wife gives me trouble, and she's a fitness gal too. But some days I'm like, it's 10 p.m. I got to go work out. She's like, why? You can take a day off. And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, I don't want to give myself that leeway, because if I do, it'll feed into the rest of my life. And, and so it's amazing how little things like that, finding your discipline, finding the things that will drive you, and you got to find it. Like you got to dig deep. And for me, it was creating a challenge, putting it out on social so everybody knew about it. And frankly, nobody would care if I didn't hit it, but it was right here. It's like, I got to do this now. Plus,
Yep.
this was my ticket to a bunch of super successful people's doorsteps. I'm doing something that a bunch of millionaires and billionaires that I want to get to know better can't do. So now I just impressed them. And that was kind of that was my mindset, right?
Yep.
And I think, I don't know if that helps anyone, but I do think that, because that kind of couples onto what you said, which
100%.
is,
Listen to where that came from. So I broke this down, took a few notes from what
awesome.
you just said, just to be a listener, right? That's a skill set. Running, you have your best thoughts when you're running. Okay. You mean you don't have your best thoughts while you're sitting in a boardroom or on a board of directors? Maybe you do, but you have yours when you're running. You're setting goals when you're running. Like that's what you're doing. You're associating running with how to achieve results. If the light bulb isn't going off right here, right now, then you and I haven't had we got to reshoot this or re-record this. Running is leading you to the professional thing. Running for you is life, dude. So like, that's all we're trying to say. And then we challenge ourselves. The book, This Is Your Captain Speaking. One of the things I was looking for is a new challenge to do something I never thought I could do. And I took this on. And the book's really more about life and family than it certainly is about business, although the lessons are certainly universal. When I took it on, it started to teach me lessons like, oh, wow, I might have to write for 60 days in a row, consistency. So through life and writing a book, I learned consistency beyond a level of consistency I'd ever been at in my professional world. Where do you think I could then apply that to? The professional world. So I actually taught myself a higher level of consistency through just trying to challenge myself here in life. And the end result is this book that I'm super proud of, and I've given it to my family and my kids, and it's a legacy for them. And it's just through life, man. And you're sitting there listening, or people are listening, like, how many times is he going to say it? I am passionate about life because life will get you the results you want in other areas. So if you're a student of that game, you're a student of yourself, you're listening to podcasts, you're reading books, and oh, by the way, you're taking action to move in the direction, there you go. That's it. And we haven't got into talking about engine parts, like what part of your business or that. And I'm so thankful for that, because that's a whole nother conversation. We don't have to ignore it. But if we can get this down first, the other stuff, you and I almost seem to be passive about the other stuff.
Yeah.
Like it almost feels like we're passive. And that's what I want for everybody, is to have that feeling and have that experience. When you keep climbing this ladder of the best version of yourself, other things are going to feel almost passive to you. And what a good feeling that is, because that is the land of opportunity for you to seek another level, right? I constantly want to be growing.
Yeah. Yeah. 1,000,000%. So I want to ask you, so give our listeners some little tidbits of the book, like what are some of your favorite chapters, and maybe 1, 2, 3, or whatever you want to give.
Sure.
Just kind of as a teaser, and like, what are those chapters about that is going to hopefully whet their appetite?
Yeah. So you mentioned the Masters, so we'll talk about that. And since I covered it in 2001, I've got a little story where golf and sports, so you'll get this. But most people know Arnold Palmer, the late Arnold Palmer, the king, Arnie's Army. And I was 21 years old covering the Masters, and with a reporter in Augusta, Georgia, who'd been in Augusta for probably 20 years before I even worked at the TV station. And when Arnold comes out, and Augusta is a very small television market, just to give some background here, very small television market. When Arnold walks out of the clubhouse, there are hundreds of reporters trying to get him. And George, who I'm working with, I'm running the camera that particular day, and George goes, "Come on over here. We're going to go grab Arnold." And I go, "Yeah, right. We're going to go grab Arnold." Arnold walks right out of the clubhouse and right up to George and goes, "Hey, George," the reporter I was with that day. "How you doing, George? Nice to see you." there's ESPN, there's every other news organization in the world is at the Masters at this time, because it's 2001 Tiger Slam. And George walks right up to us, and I went, that was a moment for me. I was like, Arnold realized that he's just a person. I realized the king is just a person. People are just people, man. Regardless of who we think they are people, just like you and I, and just like Arnold Palmer. I got another funny story about Michael Jordan in here. He came to Wilmington when he was with the Wizards. So I got to talk to Michael a few minutes, and I said, hey Jordan, do you see any of yourself in some of these younger players? And he looks at me, tosses me a big smile and a wink, and goes, no, not really. And I loved it. And that's in the book too. And it just showed me his level of confidence that he was the best in the world, even through multiple retirements, was still through the roof. And so those are some of the stories in the sports world of people are people and confidence. But I got all sorts of stories in here that I learned from my kids as well. First time, one of my daughters stood up, I captured it. Last 30 seconds, but I captured the memory. So moments and memories and life, and it's just, it's filled with things I've learned through life, and it's from the lens of a father and a husband, and it's a growth journey book, and that's what it is.
What is probably the biggest thing that readers will take away from the book after reading it?
Yeah, the feedback I've got so far is it really gets them thinking about what is the legacy that they want to leave for those people that are most important to them. But beyond that, it's not the legacy you're leaving when you're dead, right? It gets them thinking about a living legacy today and now. So when my kids got this is all about like what dad wants them to know. And they consumed it in like 2 days. And I got a chapter on work ethic in here. And my son goes, Dad, that was my favorite chapter. And I'm like, dude, you're warming my heart. So most people that read it, it gets them to think. That's the goal for it now, that is, if I can get you thinking about what is it you want the people around you today to know about you, and to start thinking about what lessons can you apply to them. That's what this book is doing. And that's a side benefit. I didn't actually expect it to be that, but that's what it's become. So I'm in conversations about people like, don't wait for tomorrow to start telling the people that you love and mean the most to you what you want them to know about you and what you want them to know about life, and like share your story. And so it's opening up some real conversations that those closest to you want to know about you.
Yeah, I love it, man. I think that this is something that hopefully a lot of our listeners will gravitate towards and realize how important it is, because it really is. And you and I didn't know each other from Adam. I wasn't even sure why we were jumping on today, as I alluded to in the beginning. And it's funny how you and I could probably talk about this for hours and maybe even days because of the connection, right? I mean, I've gone through it accidentally. You probably did too, but we've kind of found our way, and now we're sharing it with the world. And it's this isn't hokey, folks. I mean, this is serious reality. I'm not kidding. And I think Jason can agree with this. When I talk about the stats and what we've done, I spent my entire career focusing on data, focusing on stats. How do I get here? How do I get there? And we were successful, but we just plateaued and never went anywhere else because something was missing. And that something was the things that I'm passionate for, the things that drive my energy. And I didn't realize it. I didn't know it. And I wish I had known this a hell of a lot sooner in my career and had found it sooner, because I'd probably be retired today. But
me too, man. Amen to that. And one thing, I don't know if you had this exact same experience, but we talk a little bit about adversity in the book. I think a lot of people, you start to figure some of this stuff out through adversity. So some folks are going through some tough times right now. Adversity is an opportunity if you look at it that. So somebody might be scratching their head going like, how do I come up with it right now? You might be looking at your opportunity and don't even know it's your opportunity.
yeah.
And a lot of people could even go back a couple of years and figure out like something didn't feel right. Like you're not doing the best you can do for yourself here. So it may be already presented itself in the world of just trying to be a better version of yourself. And I know for me, it wasn't always there. I'm 44. I started thinking about this stuff 7 years ago, and I just wasn't the person I wanted to be, and a little bit of adversity. And I'm like, all right. So I started on the journey, and here we are with a book. Who the hell knew I could write a book? I failed copy editing in college and had no business writing a book. And 4 years ago, didn't want to write a book, but I was open to this path and this progression. And because of that desire, I've got a book and I'm proud of it. And I hope you guys will pick it up.
I love it. Let me say it again. It's todayyouchoose.com. The name of the book is This Is Your Captain Speaking. You should absolutely go check that out. Jason, is there any place? So is that where they would get the book as well? Is there anything that we can offer to the LabCoat community?
Go to hit up todayyouchoose.com, and then chapter 1 is in there for everybody. So if you go there, you can get chapter 1 for free. And there's also a connect with me button on the page. If you guys connect with me, I'm happy to spend time talking with anybody in the LabCoat agent community about how to kind of find their passion. I'm passionate about talking to people about that. So if you want to reach me directly, connect with me there, and we'll even set up a call.
It's fantastic. Jason, this has been absolutely amazing conversation. Oh, by the way, it was Tiger Woods who won the Masters in 2001, for anybody who's wondering. It was his second Masters. I actually Googled it while we were talking just to make sure I wasn't a total idiot.
Yep.
But good stuff, man. This has been a great conversation. I'm glad we connected, and hope we stay in touch. And again, for all of you out there listening, go check out todayyouchoose.com. You will not be disappointed. Jason Martin, it's been a pleasure, and I wish you the best of luck, my friend.
Jeff, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
LabCoat Agents Podcast.